So for my special project, I will be talking about dialysis and what dialysis is. If you hear little paws, I'm sorry, it's my little dogs walking around, so sorry. Anyways, I will be talking about dialysis, what dialysis is, what actually happens in the process, and specifically I will be talking about cellular transport and what happens in the artificial kidney, which we call a dialyzer. So I will be doing 2 experiments, one that will be showing, I'm not gonna tell you so then you can try and guess it, but we will be doing an experiment with a cucumber and another one with a tea bag. So for the first experiment, you will need a cucumber, which I already used, some salt, and just a plate. You can also use strawberries and sugar, which basically does the same thing. So let's go ahead and get started. So you want to grab your cucumber and cut pretty much even slices. We're gonna do 2 of them. You grab your salt, and you just pour some salt over the cucumber, enough to coat all of it. That should be good. And same with the other one. After you have poured your salt, you want to wait 3 to 5 minutes, and then we will see what the result is. A little bit about dialysis and what actually happens. So dialysis, an individual who has kidney failure, whose kidneys work less than 15%, has to be on dialysis. You have to go into treatment 3 times a week for 4 to 5 hours. Before you start dialysis, you have a fistula made. A fistula is an artificial vein where they go in and they connect an artery and a vein, and that way we can insert needles, one that will take the blood out and then it will go through the tubing of the dialysis machine, and another one will return the blood back in. When you're on dialysis, it helps to help with the functions that the kidney does, which the kidney is an amazing organ. It helps with removal of fluid. It helps to take out toxins like urea, potassium, calcium, phosphorus, all those toxins that can build up in your body. So when you have kidney failure, you are unable to urinate, or you're only able to urinate a little bit. So therefore you have to come to treatment. And while you are there, we will dialyze the fluid that you have taken in, and we will also clean the blood. And that's where I wanted to talk more about, is about the artificial kidney, the dialyzer, and what actually goes on in the hollow fibers that are in the dialyzer. So in the dialyzer, there is actually more than 10,000 little fibers in there. They're tiny little hollow fibers, and that's where the blood goes through, and that's where all the cellular transport happens, where it takes out the bigger molecules and it leaves the smaller molecules, and it cleans your blood. So like the potassium, the phosphorus, those are able to go through the semipermeable membrane and dialyze out, while others like the proteins are,
and it'll draw those solutes out. It's an amazing process when you think it has to get to the cells all through your body, from your toes to your head. Each one of those cells has fluid in it that needs to be cleaned. Everything you normally would get rid of through urination, you're trying to get rid of through the hemodialysis.
Inside each kidney, about 1 million tiny units called nephrons rid the body of excess and unwanted substances. Each nephron has 2 parts, the glomerulus and the tubules. Inside the glomerulus, large amounts of fluid, dissolved substances such as minerals, and waste products are filtered from the blood and form a substance called filtrate. From the glomerulus, this filtrate flows into the tubules. Inside the tubules, the filtrate is condensed to urine. Most of the water is reabsorbed into the blood, as well as the needed amounts of minerals and other substances your body needs. At the same time, additional substances the body needs to get rid of flow into the tubules and are eliminated as urine.
So back to our experiment. It has been about 7 minutes now, a little more, but it's okay, it still works the same. So if you will zoom in to the cucumber, you can see that there's a little bit of water that has come up to the surface, and if I tilt it over, you will see as well. On this one, it also has it around the perimeter. So can you guess what happened with our cucumber and our salt? So what happened is osmosis. So it went from a higher concentration, which was the salt outside, and then the salt pulled the water out of the cucumber. And this is something that happens in the dialyzer when you are doing dialysis. Okay, so moving on from our first experiment, we're gonna go into our second experiment. And my cameraman, who is my little brother, he's actually learning a lot. So he is very anxious to see what we're gonna do with this next experiment. So for the next experiment, you will need some hot water, a tea, preferably one that has a string, because this is basically gonna be 2-in-1 experiment, and we will see what happens. So I have my hot water here, and we're gonna put my tea bag in. Let it steep for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then we will come back and see what happens. You see that our water has turned much darker from the tea bag. So can you guess what happened while the tea bag was in the warm water? You are wrong. I'm just kidding. So filtration happened, which means that fluid passed through the seminal membrane, controlled by a hydrostatic pressure, which would be like the tea bag and the temperature of the water. So another experiment that I wanted to do with the same tea bag would be, you grab your tea bag and you basically wrap the string around here, and see how I am squeezing it and more water is coming out. So that is called ultrafiltration, and that is a controlled fluid removal by manipulation of a hydrostatic pressure. And believe it or not, all of this happens just in the dialyzer. When the patients are dialyzing, I mean, the dialyzer turns red because you can see the blood going through. But basically, diffusion, ultrafiltration, osmosis, all of that is happening within these tiny hollow fibers that I spoke about earlier. Wow, cameraman. So all of this is happening in the dialyzer, and it's just amazing what dialysis does, even though it only makes up for 12 to 17% of kidney function. It's better than having nothing. So I think dialysis is extremely interesting. I feel for these patients who have to come in, but you know, I get to have such a great bond with them. I actually work in dialysis. I have been a dialysis tech for almost 3 years now. I was going to school for radiology, but the more I work with patients, the more I get to know them. I want to work in nursing. Maybe one day I will work in nephrology, but probably not because it's kind of boring. But I just think the kidneys are an amazing thing, and I hope that you learned something from my experiments and from this project that I have.